Debra Muth, or Dr. Deb, that she likes to be called, in which I call her. She's a functional medicine practitioner, also an entrepreneur. Her practice was struggling, and she had to kind of turn around and learn how to be a better business owner. She got coaching, she joined peer groups. We talk about that. We first talk about functional medicine and how important it is, how it works alongside your medical doctor, and how they really look at things very differently. I know I've been learning about it. I will find a functional doctor very soon, and I'm looking forward to it. And then we make the transition over to running a business and how to work with employees and how to work with vendors and sales and how you pay yourself first. And it's a great conversation. And really, two fronts with which she is a specialist. So knows a lot of things about functional medicine, of course, and of course, running a business. Great conversation. I know you'll enjoy it. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration.
Nice to meet you.
It is a pleasure. It is a pleasure. I've got so many questions. Let's let's start on the medical side,
Okay.
before we get into entrepreneurism, and the struggles there and your, how important is functional medicine?
Oh, functional medicine is the most important thing that keeps us healthy, strong, and well. Um, to me, it should be our first line medicine.
Mm,
Medicine shouldn't be what we all in the country know as conventional or traditional medicine is when you see your regular doctor, you go to the hospital. Functional medicine should be that first point. It's
mm.
where we look at what are you eating? How are you sleeping? How are you managing stress? How are you taking care of yourself? Those things should come before you need this medicine or this drug to fix your problem. So it's huge.
Yeah, and it's relatively new. I've only heard about it within the last, oh, I don't know, year or so, and I guess a
Mm.
lot of the skepticism is that insurance hasn't adopted it, so they're not covered by insurance a lot of times, correct?
Correct. So I've been doing functional medicine for 25 years. Prior to
Hmm,
that, it has always been our medicine of choice. Chinese medicine is also considered functional medicine. It's been around for thousands of years. It's all the things that our parents and grandparents did to take care of ourselves because they didn't see the doctor.
hmm.
So it starts with that. But you're absolutely right. Insurance doesn't recognize it, so oftentimes it's an out of pocket expense. In my opinion, this is a wellness visit, is functional medicine. Wellness visits isn't how many vaccines do you have? Did you get your colonoscopy? Did you get your mammogram? That's not a wellness visit. That's a disease test medicine.
Hmm.
Wellness is truly looking at you, yourself as a whole, and saying, how are you feeling? What's going on? And where can we kind of plug the dam in your body so that you don't continue to have problems and end up with a disease.
Very interesting. And the first step in functional medicine for a patient is what?
The first step is to find a functional medicine practitioner that you connect with, somebody that is going to allow you to partner with them in your care. They're not going to dictate to you what you should do. They're going to actually partner with you. They're going to meet you where you're at and say, okay, you're willing to give up your McDonald's twice a
Mm,
week. I can work with that. You're not ready to quit smoking. Okay, we don't like that. However, let's get you on a path to start working you down from 10 cigarettes a day to 3 cigarettes a day.
mm,
I don't like the functional medicine people who only want to work with people that don't smoke, don't eat junk food,
mm.
sleep well. Well, why do you need me if you're already doing all those good things? I want to work with and partner with people to get them from maybe a not so healthy place to a healthy place to a really great healthy place. But that takes time and that takes learning. It doesn't happen overnight. So I think aligning yourself with somebody that you can work with is huge. And then the second part is to just recognize that everything we've been taught about medicine is not necessarily true.
Hmm.
And we do have control over our bodies, and what we put in them makes a huge difference. And what we do to them makes a big difference with our longevity. And there are natural things that we can do to help prevent disease from occurring as we age and we progress through life.
I'm always shocked when I have a physical and they never ask me what I eat.
Yeah.
I'm just shocked at that.
Mhm. Yeah, unfortunately, traditional medical doctors get 4 hours of nutritional training throughout their entire career of learning in medicine, which
Hmm.
is 8 plus years, right? 4 hours of nutrition. That's it. And when you look at functional medicine people, like that is the bulk of what we learn, because that nutrition, what we feed ourselves, is what we produce, right? And so it's a huge difference for us. And we ought to be looking at what are people consuming on a regular basis. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't go out and have that occasional, banana cream pie or whatever it is that you love. It's just not something you want to be doing every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And isn't I see now with some functional medicine, you kind of have to take a baseline. They take some blood and they do a bunch of
Mhm.
tests to kind of figure out where to go from there, just
Mhm.
as you do for a regular checkup. Is it exhaustive? What is that process like?
Yeah, it depends on the practitioner that you're seeing. Some functional medicine practitioners will run the same type of tests that a traditional doctor will run, but most of us want to dig a little deeper.
Hmm.
So we don't want to just see how good your liver function is or how good your kidneys are functioning or what do your blood cells look like. We want to know deeper information. What are your nutrients in your body like? Do you have enough vitamin D? Do you have enough vitamin B? Where's your magnesium level? We want to look at a full in depth thyroid function panel. As we age, we have a tendency to have a sluggish thyroid, and so we want to see completely what that thyroid is doing. We want to look at your cholesterol, but not just how much cholesterol you have. What do the sizes of your cholesterol look like? So, your fat particles, do you have a lot of big buoyant particles that push through that artery and don't cause problems? Or do
Hmm.
you have a lot of the small sticky ones that stack on top of each other that create the blockage in the artery? That makes a huge difference. Depending on that number, you could have a cholesterol of 250, but if 90% of them are all those big, beautiful, buoyant ones, we don't worry so much. But if
Interesting.
90% of them are those sticky ones, we've got a bigger concern then. So we can look at a lot of different things from a functional medicine physical that your traditional doctor is not going to look at. And then you can go in depth, and if you have very specific concerns, we can look at various things based on that. I like to look at a baseline hormone panel for a lot of my patients. I want to know where your hormone levels are at a younger age versus waiting until you're 50 or 60 to take a look at them. I'd rather know when you're at your peak in your 20s, what are your hormones like then? Because that's going to tell us a lot as you age, as they start to shift. How are you going to feel, and how do we fix that so that you don't have problems down the road?
Very interesting. Can functional doctors prescribe medicine?
Some, yes. So if they're a functional medicine doctor who's either a nurse practitioner or a medical doctor or a PA and they have functional medicine training, yes, they can prescribe medicine. If it's a functional medicine practitioner who's a health coach or a nutritional dietitian or a naturopath, depending on the state, they may or may not be able to prescribe then, depending on the law.
And when choosing one, uh, what are some red flags? What are some things to look for? There are sites that I see where you can find functional practitioners in your geography. Is there anything to look for specifically?
Yeah, so I would look at a website called IFM, the Institute for Functional Medicine. They do a lot of training and preparation of functional medicine practitioners, and they'll have a list of the people that have gone through their training and in different geographical areas. There's also the A4M. It's A with the number 4M. It's the Anti Aging and Regenerative Medicine Organization. They also do a lot of functional medicine training, and they will have doctors listed all over the country. The other thing I would say is chat with people that you know. You'd be
Mm,
surprised how many people you know a functional medicine practitioner or
mm,
have somebody has seen one. It's always best to get referrals from people who've worked with them because then you know what their personality is like. But the other thing I would say is if you're picking somebody off of one of these platforms and you don't really know them, call and ask questions of them
mm.
before you connect. You can ask questions of their support staff. Like, I would ask, how long have they been in practice? What's their philosophy? If you have a specific illness that you want to talk to them about, ask them how many patients they've seen with that condition. Those kind of questions are going to give you a lot of information to decide if you're a good fit or not. Um, some practitioners will also offer a free consult. So you can come and meet them for 10 or 15 minutes and then decide if you want to work together. So there's a lot of ways to kind of vet that functional medicine person to see if they're the right fit for you.
Very interesting. And you mentioned before where some of them actually vet the patients and they won't take smokers
Mhm.
or vegetarians. I don't even
Mhm.
these kind of categories. Does that
Yeah.
happen too often?
Not so much like a vegetarian, but a smoker or somebody who has a lifestyle that they don't deem as healthy enough.
Huh.
People who are on certain medications like narcotics or people who've had drug abuse issues in the past, they may choose not to work with those people. And it's just personal preference. They want to work with people that they feel are committed and they feel if you've quit smoking, you're committed. But I feel like we're all on a different playing field. We all have a bad habit somewhere, including them. They are not perfect.
Right.
So, I don't do that, but I do have colleagues that have chosen to do that. Yes. And now we're even starting to see people that are choosing not to work with patients that have been vaccinated from COVID. I
Hmm.
have colleagues that have decided they're not going to work with the vaccinated, just like our traditional medicine is saying, I'm not going to work with the unvaccinated. We're starting to see some of that
Wow.
discrimination happen as well.
Fascinating. And uh if I've struggled with obesity in the past,
Mhm.
I started a business. We're going to talk about that shortly. I wasn't paying attention, and next thing I
Mhm.
know, I'm 340 pounds. My daughter's born. The medical doctor says, if I'm pre-diabetic. If you don't do things differently, Joe, you're not going to see your daughter. So
Mhm.
complete shift in lifestyle. Lost a lot of weight. Kind of stay there now. Now I do intermittent fasting and I do these kinds of things. I mean, are there any of those, will a functional doctor say, I don't like IF, for
Mhm.
example, and not work with you? Are there other things that are a little more open and more acceptable to others that might be not acceptable to them?
Not so much in that realm. Most of us are believers of intermittent fasting. We all have a little different take on what the
Mm,
length of time should be, especially between men and women. So there's a little difference in that aspect. But not really. I mean, most functional medicine doctors are pretty open to different diets, different lifestyle choices of diet. We all kind of believe that gluten is not the best thing for us. It's
mm,
inflammatory. Dairy is very inflammatory. White refined sugar, those kinds of things should all be eliminated or minimized in the diet as much as possible. And that primarily comes from our training, right? So the IFM and A4M promote a lot of that dietary changes. Um, mostly everybody believes that we should be eating organic fruits and vegetables as much as we possibly can. If there's a financial aspect where you can't afford that, eating the Dirty Dozen, the Clean 13 is a really great way of choosing which things are quote unquote the dirtiest in place of like chemicals and toxins in those foods. And so you can choose to just have a few of those fruits and vegetables in the organic realm if cost is an issue for you. So we do try to look at those kinds of things with patients so that we can make it affordable for people.
I get to talk to, really fascinating and smart people, and I just learned about the Dirty Dozen within the last month, and
Mhm.
I was never a purchaser of organics. Now I've completely shifted. I mean, those darn strawberries are just sponges. They're just soaking in everything, aren't they?
Yeah.
I never realized.
Mhm. So true. We don't think about fruit like bananas is one of the dirtiest fruits available, and you don't think about it because they've got this nice thick
Right.
skin on them. But all of those toxins that are grown up in the fruit, and as the fruit grows up, it's in the flesh of the fruit that we eat as well. And it can be really problematic for people. And we see a lot of what we call endocrine disruptors. So it's the chemicals inside the foods that we eat that throw off our hormonal system, and it can be responsible for a lot of estrogen overload and some obesity and different complications for people with high blood pressure, all of that simply because they're eating these foods that have chemicals in them and they don't realize those chemicals are bad for them.
Fascinating. So, can you see a functional doctor remotely?
Yes, you can. Prior to COVID, the rule was that you had to at least have one in person visit with your practitioner to constitute a patient practitioner relationship. And
Hmm.
otherwise, the practitioner could be in trouble with their medical board. Since COVID has happened, you can now do virtual or what we call telemedicine via Zoom or some other video platform. And that is enough to establish that relationship with your practitioner. Primarily, that really plays a big place if you want that practitioner to prescribe medication for you, like thyroid medication or hormones. If you're not prescribing any medication, you can see somebody remotely for anything else that you want. It really just ends up being that prescription authority that happens across state lines that can be complicated for them. But there are a ton of great functional medicine practitioners, and telemedicine has made it very easy for people to be able to get this care, where before you'd have to drive an hour or two to see somebody, take off of work. It might be a half a day or a full day for an hour and a half appointment with your functional medicine doctor. Now you can just take your lunch break and have your visit
Hmm.
and go right back to work. So it's really made things a lot easier for people to seek care from a functional medicine practitioner.
Yeah, recently I'm empty nest. So my youngest went away. So I'm going to be
Mhm.
kind of location, in specific or independent.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
so when I go to these sites now, IFM and or the other one, you said A4M,
Mhm.
the geography doesn't matter anymore. It kind
Correct,
of
it doesn't.
it opens up.
Mhm.
Now I've been put on blood pressure medication. I'm down to like 5 milligrams of lisinopril. I'm
Mhm.
wondering if the shift of all the what you just said, the toxins and in the fruit and
Mhm.
organics, I would love as a goal to be off of that. So I guess that would be the
Mhm.
first goal of my functional medicine
Mhm.
discovery and
Yeah,
discussion.
that's awesome. So, one of the big things that we know that leads to high blood pressure is heavy metal toxicity. So, things like lead, mercury, cadmium. And these are all things that most people would say, well, I don't have that exposure to any of those things, but we actually do.
Mm,
All of these things are in our air. Our air quality is not what it should be. A lot of these chemicals and metals are in our groundwater sources. And
mm,
so, you can become contaminated from just your environment alone. Pretty much every type of thing that comes in from China has lead based paint on it.
hmm,
So there's a lot of ways that we can get exposure to those things. And if they're high in our body, because for whatever reason our bodies can't release those toxins, they can lead to high blood pressure. So oftentimes in functional medicine, that is one of the things that we look at with high blood pressure is what's going on with your heavy metals. Do you have a high lead level? That's the big one that causes hypertension for people. And if we can get that lead out of the body, oftentimes we can lower that blood pressure. Obviously, weight loss, you look like you're in great shape now.
Mm.
So, weight loss can help a lot. And depending on where your blood pressure is riding, there are some herbs that we can use to transition people from high blood pressure medicine to an herbal. With the help of your primary care doctor, we can do those kinds of things. And sometimes it's successful, and sometimes we still have to have a little bit of that blood pressure medicine there.
Should people tell their medical doctor that they're seeing a functional doctor?
I think they need to. We really need to be a team. It's not something that you have to worry about hiding from your
Mm.
regular doctor. You're asking for another person to become part of your medical team, and they can communicate with one another and share their knowledge about you so that you get the results that you want faster. In the past, a lot of people chose to hide that from their traditional doctor, but now it's becoming much more acceptable, and it's not necessary to do that. And we encourage people to let their primary care doctors know that they're working with somebody that's functional or alternative in nature.
Excellent, excellent advice. And I'm certainly going to do it. I hope others will. Just to get, like you say, just another angle, another perspective of
Mhm.
health. Functional medicine, it fascinates me. Should business owners be friends with their employees?
Oh gosh, that is a tricky question, isn't it?
I heard everything about
Um,
it. Let's hear it. Yeah.
yeah. So when I started out in business, I was very good friends with all of my employees. They were like family to me. But for me, what ended up happening is I ended up making poor business choices because of my friends that were my employees. And I loved them and I cared about them. And even though they weren't the best fit for the
Mm.
business, I defended them many times when I should have been defending my client instead of my employee. And so for me, it's made things a big challenge. And over the years, I've transitioned away from having close friendship relationships with my employees because it clouds my judgment in making good business decisions. Now, it may not be that way for everyone, but it was for me. So I choose not to be close friends with my employees. I can be respectful, I can be friendly, I can be compassionate about what they're going through with their families and their problems, but I really don't want to be close knit friends with them where we're having parties together and we're sharing our lives together in that fashion on the personal side. It's just too difficult. It's too hurtful when you have to make those tough decisions, for me anyway.
You spoke of this one particular case where somebody was hanging on and they were going through a lot of stress. I believe it was your office manager, and
Mhm.
you said you weren't going to fire them, but then vendors weren't showing up, patients weren't, and then
Mhm.
eventually they just quit, and it just kind of broke you down.
Yeah, it really did. She was my right hand person. She was with me through some very difficult personal things that I was going through when I started my business and my professional things. And I loved her dearly, but the practice became very challenging for her and started to cause her to have health problems because she was working so much and so stressed. And then it started to spill over into how she treated our clients and how she treated our vendors. And when I have vendors that say, like salespeople say, I'm not going to come to your office anymore, I'm
Mm,
kind of like, okay, salespeople come no matter what. So if my salespeople don't want to come, what are my
that's not,
clients feeling?
yeah.
And I did have clients who would say, I love you, but I can't come into your office because of her. And it finally came down to this really difficult choice of saying, either you have to go or something has to change. And it was the first person I had to have that conversation with about not wanting them to be part of my team anymore. And it was extremely difficult for me. I'd never fired anybody before. And that's when I looked at her and I said, I'm not going to fire you, but you can't be like this anymore. And she was gracious enough to look at me and say, I'm not going to make you fire me. I will leave. And she knew where it was going. She knew I couldn't do it personally. I
Mm,
just couldn't
mm.
do it. And she took that pressure off of me and made that choice for herself. And it was a good choice for her because she was able to get healthy after she left. And it was a good choice for the business. But I realized at that moment, like, I can never have that close connected relationship with someone again because it was just so difficult. And I wouldn't have made the choice. I would have kept her on for I don't know how long
Mm.
before I would have made the choice to say, you've got to go. And that would have hurt my business significantly.
Do you talk to her now?
Occasionally. Yeah, we do talk occasionally. She came to my son's wedding a few years ago. And it's a different relationship.
Mm.
It's not the same that it was. Um, and that's sad, but we've both moved on and we've both grown from that experience. But yeah, it's a challenge.
It really is. I started my tech business in the 90s, and I've had many employees kind of come and go, and some that stayed with me. But yeah, to make that kind of division, I got invited to employees' weddings,
Mhm,
there's children's weddings, certainly go and everything, and you're certainly friendly, but I
mhm,
just would not consider them friends because, all of a sudden, raise time happens, or, it's
mhm,
just have to make that division. And I see it time and time again where business owners are just like best friends with their VPs or whatever. And
mhm,
you have to be so careful there. And
mhm,
you talked about um, just the kind of the turmoil that you would come into the office and then you would be inundated with this
mhm.
happening and this, and you eventually had to hire somebody and they were good for you. You realize you had to make them a partner, and they did well for a while, but then that stopped. But it's very difficult to be a business owner. Employees are really the first. My goodness, the first barrier of which you really have to get good at.
Absolutely. I think you can be really good at your craft, amazing,
Mm,
but the people you surround yourself with really make or break your business. Because if they can't express the same message that you have and they don't have the same love for what you're doing that you have, they can turn off customers very quickly. And I've learned it's really difficult with employees because we all have that different personality. We're all there for a different reason. And I think in our minds as employers, we're kind of thinking like everybody should have the same passion and energy we have about our business.
mm,
But so many times the people you're employing are just there to collect a paycheck. They really don't have that passion or that care. And so finding that A team for you is key. And the other thing I realized that just because you have an A team doesn't mean they're always going to stay with you.
mm,
And that's hard too because you work with them, you craft them, you train them, you set them up, and now you've got this amazing team. And somebody leaves, and now there's a missing leg in your team. And how do you bring that cohesiveness back? And it's really a challenge. For me, we've spent a lot of time and a lot of money in training our staff. We realized not as quickly as we should have that training and investing in our staff was so important for us to be successful and streamlined. And them having the knowledge that we have as providers, at least to some degree, actually made our job smoother and easier
mm.
versus keeping all that knowledge for ourselves. And they can't troubleshoot things for us then. So we've done a lot of investing in time and training and energy, but it's hard because you invest all that time and energy in people and then they leave and then you get kind of sour about training people and spending that time, but you really need to do it as an employer.
Have no choice, yeah, and
Right.
like your coach told you, you can invite them to be successful somewhere else.
Yes, you can. And I loved that line. I probably overused it some days. But I did invite some people to be successful someplace else, and they were key players for me in my practice, and they build a lot of money into our practice, but they also created so much turmoil and so much stress that it was better for them to go be successful someplace else. And without them, financially we didn't change that much, but emotionally and the stress and the turmoil was completely gone when they left. And that's key to be able to recognize, who's creating drama inside your team, and forcing other good people to want to leave because you have one bad
Mm,
apple in your
mm,
team. That's a problem.
absolutely, yeah, it could be cancerous.
Yeah.
Uh, one quick employee story, very much the exception. I was paying a monthly stipend for car use. My employees
Hmm.
had to be at certain places, so I pay a flat rate We acquired another company and got a fleet of cars. So I said, okay, everybody just come in and use the fleet of cars now. We don't need
Mhm.
to use your own vehicle. A week later, can I come into your office, Joe? I have a stressful situation. Please come in. You're
Mhm.
causing a stressful situation at my home. And I said, well, my goodness, I don't want to do that. I said,
Mhm.
well, the allowance you were giving me for, for the car, we were able to buy furniture for my basement, and now we can't afford it.
Uh-huh.
So, immediately am I being recorded? I don't, is this
Mhm.
some kind of, joke? And then I have to wipe the smile off my face because, obviously his wife was upset with him about this, so
Mhm.
things owners need to take care of and address and perhaps invite to be some successful somewhere else.
Mhm.
Big, another thing you stress is to pay yourself first.
Yes. Yeah, so many times as business owners, what I see them do is just take money out of the business when they need it.
Mm,
I'm going to go to dinner. I'm going to take $100 out. Going to go on a trip. I'm going to take 3,000 out. I need to pay my mortgage. I'm going to pay myself $1,000, but it's not consistent. If you don't pay yourself first, a continuous regular salary, W-2 salary plus dividend income, you don't have a business truly. You have to pay yourself. If you pay everyone first and you're left with whatever is left over, A, you're never going to make any money. And B, you're going
mm.
to get really frustrated really fast about how you're working for nothing. Um, and you have to think in the future, you're going to want to sell this business someday. At least, hopefully, we all think that. We're not of the thought that I'm just going to close my business and retire, because then why did you have a business all these years? You just had a job, you just worked for yourself. That was the difference. You want to have a business that's worth something to sell later on. In order to do that, you have to show that you've had a salary plus dividend in order for that business to be worth something to someone else, because they don't want a business that they can't make any money from. So however you set that up, whether it's a small amount of W-2 with a larger dividend or vice versa, depending on what you decide with your tax person, you have to pay yourself first and then pay everyone else after the fact. And the money will be there. It's always there. It's just that we look at it differently.
So often I see business owners like putting themselves last like that.
Mhm.
It's surprising.
Mhm.
And you got frustrated so much to a point that you ended up getting a coach. Talk about that, what the
Mhm.
process was like, and how the relationship worked.
Yeah. So about 7-ish years ago, I got really frustrated and wanted to walk away from it all. I wanted to sell my business. I would just work by myself, hire my daughter, and we would have a practice, just the two of us, because I was tired of managing people. I really sucked at it. I didn't know what I didn't know, right? People don't teach you business most of the time. And even in
Right.
business school, they don't teach you how to manage people. They teach you basic business stuff. So I sought out a financial coach to start with, because I wanted to prepare my business for sale. And when I went into this endeavor, I said, I don't care what I need to do. I want you to sell my practice in the next 2 years. And I spent a weekend with this group, and they showed me that there was a way that I could keep my business as long as I wanted to without being the primary person in it and not being stressed out. But I needed to learn all these things about how to manage people in order to do that. And so I decided after spending a weekend with them that I would give this a chance, but I still wanted them to set my business up for sale. I still wasn't convinced that I wanted to keep it. And so we worked on both things at that time. So they kind of said, here's what you need to do to make sure your business is sellable. You need to document everything you do. You need to be able to turn a handbook over to somebody. They could walk in, take over your practice, and it would run just like it runs now, but without you. So we started that process. It was a pretty lengthy process for us to document everything we do.
Hmm.
But in that process, we realized that there was a lot of holes in the things that we did. And everybody was doing something a little bit differently. And that's what created some of the confusion and the frustration amongst my team at the time. So we started filling those gaps. And then I worked with my coach. I met with him every single week, and we would go over things that were happening in the practice. what's the good things that happened this week? What's the not so good things that happened this week? Where are you having challenges? And how do we fix that? And he was amazing with building teams. That was his expertise, right? And so when I was having problems with a practitioner or a staff member and I couldn't get them to engage the way I wanted them to, he and I would talk through, like, here's how you need to talk to them. Here's what you need to know about what they're thinking. It's not just one-sided. It's not just what you're thinking. And we would work together. And it took me a little longer than I'd like to admit it took me
Hmm.
to realize that my attitude had to change, right? Like, my attitude was, I'm giving you a paycheck. You just need to do what I tell you to do and don't
Right.
ask any questions and just show up. And it took me a lot longer to realize, like, that's not how I'm going to get people to do what I want them to do. And he and I would talk through those struggles that I had with that attitude about how I employed people. And now I don't look at my employees like that at all. Yes, they get a paycheck from me, but I get so much more out of them and my clients get so much more out of them than just me giving them a paycheck. And it took about 4.5 years of us working together
Hmm.
one on one every week for me to get to this place where I recognize that about my employees. But it was an amazing process for me.
Yeah, you have unkind things to say about yourself before this, about how you
Yes.
treated, yeah. I'll say that.
Yes, I was a real asshole.
Okay, that's what you said. That's
Yes, I was not very nice. I mean, I was nice, but I didn't have a lot of patience for
right.
people and their what they were going through in life and how they felt about being an employee. Um, yeah, I wasn't so nice. I could see now looking back, like, why somebody wouldn't want to work for me. I was compassionate, but I had a different viewpoint of how employees should be. And now I don't look at them that way at all. And even though we're not close friends anymore, I still respect them and appreciate them. And I let them know every day how much I appreciate them and that I couldn't do what I do now without them. And we have a nice partnership now. So it's very different.
Do you think that some of the fear of a lot of business owners that they're so concentrated in their discipline and in their focus in their business that if they learned how to treat employees or learned sales and marketing and financial areas, they would, take away from, I only have so much capacity. You think there's the
Mhm.
fear there?
I do. I think there is that problem. And I think when you transition and you focus on learning something new, something else has to give, right?
Mm,
And so then where you spend your time learning about your craft, you don't have as much time to do that. And I think as people, we have a hard time being able to be fluent that way. But as a business owner, you need to be able to be flexible with that. And you need to recognize that you don't always have to be the sole expert. Somebody else on your team can be an expert in your field while you're learning the financial part or while you're learning sales and marketing. And maybe you don't have to be the expert of sales and marketing, but you do need to understand some of it. Otherwise, the wool gets pulled over your eyes by all these flashy salespeople, and they tell you they can promise you the world and they
mm.
deliver nothing, and you've just spent $10,000 for zero. So you have to be able to learn something, even though you may not have to know exactly, how does HubSpot work or Active Campaign, or how am I going to make a lead page, or how am I going to do this? You don't need all the details to that, but you do need to know how do you get from A to Z and what are you looking for to make sure they're meeting those landmarks that they're saying they're going to do.
Yeah, very, very well put. So I'm from the tech industry, and so you have a lot of these technology-led people leading
Hmm.
businesses. At least in your industry, you have patients. You're actually dealing with
Hmm.
humans, so there is that kind of interaction. And unfortunately, we see in the tech industry, you don't see that very often. And there's a lot of
Hmm.
males, and there's a lot of,
Hmm.
so you have to kind of bridge that a bit and uh, help them along. Uh, do you believe in peer groups?
I do. I love peer groups.
Mm,
I think, peer groups or what we call masterminds these days, I think they're very helpful because you can network. When I was early in my business, there was no time for networking because
right.
I was working from 7 in the morning till 11 at night. Who had time for networking? And I didn't think it was important at all. And as I developed a team around me, had time to start to network again. And I realized how much I missed out on not networking in the early days because I think there's things I wouldn't have struggled with as much if I would have had other people that were just ahead of me a little bit that could have mentored me and
Mm.
given me some advice. So I think peer groups are great, and they're super helpful because you don't feel alone in what you're doing. Everybody's had the same experience as you. It might be one level or another up or down, but we've all experienced the same thing. And it's great to know that they got through it and you'll get through it too. And if you just pick up one pearl, it's been worth your time or effort or money that you've put in to be part of those groups.
I joined one about 10 years in, and I couldn't believe I didn't feel like I was on an island anymore,
Yeah.
and, it was in the tech industry, so it's really specific, and
Mhm.
all of a sudden, wow, this stuff I'm actually pretty good at, this I'm bad at, we could share, and we could,
Mhm.
not be competitive with each other. I mean, it was just a big, big game changer, and,
Yeah.
I think everyone should do it. So Dr. Deb, you've made, the transition where you had your practice, you were frustrated, you got coaching, you're in peer groups, and now hopefully we're coming out of the pandemic and you're where you are
Mhm.
now and you had to change a lot of your staff there. And now you're actually helping others.
Mhm.
Incredible transition.
Yeah, I am. I am helping other functional medicine practitioners that either A, want to develop a functional medicine practice and they don't know how, they don't know where to start, or B, they have a functional medicine practice, but they want to scale up and they're
Mm,
in the place like where I was 7 years ago and they're frustrated and they're burnt out and they don't know how to get from point A to point B. So we have created a coaching program to help them do that, and we have some different programs that they can do, so that they can implement things that we've found that can be really successful and helpful, so they don't have to struggle by themselves anymore. They don't have to feel like they're on that island all alone, because it's a lonely place when you're in that
absolutely.
sector of things.
And it's only for functional medicine practitioners.
It is. It's only for functional medicine practitioners. That's what we're the expert at.
Mm,
So we want to help other functional medicine. Functional medicine is a business of which not many people make a lot of money. They make an okay living, but they're struggling
hmm.
and they don't know how to get more clients. They don't know how to expand their practice. They don't know what services to bring in because there's a whole host of services you can bring in and there's so many modalities. You could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on equipment and then not know how to make that work for their business. And
Wow.
so we help them figure those things out and build a team out so they actually have a business that runs without them, not because of them. And they have to be the sole person that provides all the care. So we're really helping those people transition out of being the only person in their business to having that team around them so they can have freedom that they're looking for in their business.
One of your points that you made, that you struggled to get out of, was that your clients would tell you, "I'm really here just because of you."
Yeah, exactly. And that's a hard one. I mean, it's great for the ego. It makes you feel really good.
Sure.
However, you also realize at some point I don't want to be there. At some point, I'm going to want to retire.
Right.
And in order for me to do that, I have to have a team of people that my clients are willing to work with as well. Otherwise, what happens when I retire? Who takes on their care or
Mm.
their services? And so I had to kind of mold and shape my practitioners so that they were similar to me in the means of how they worked with clients, so my clients could feel that same connection with them that they felt with me. And I think that's key because otherwise, when practitioners leave, about 60% of their clients leave too. And they don't
Mm.
see somebody inside the practice still because they don't feel connected to them. So we've started working with our team so that they get that touch point with my current clients and my clients can feel comfortable with them just as comfortable as they would with me, so that that transition, when that time happens, it's okay. And if I'm not there because I'm taking more time off or I'm doing more things like this coaching, they'll feel comfortable seeing my team instead of me. And so it's really one of those things you have to start thinking about when you start thinking about selling your practice. or selling your business. And I really believe the day you start your practice, you should also be planning for the day you exit your business. Because if you don't plan it from the get go, you're already 10 years behind the eight ball and you're going to try to play catch up. And that's going to be a struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk a lot about discipline. The way people ask me how I lose the weight. It's
Hmm.
just discipline, and
Hmm.
running a business takes a lot of discipline. You have to have an exit plan.
You do.
Otherwise, if you don't exit the business will exit you, and
Hmm.
it's very, very important. And functional medicine, I mean, to me, it's very new and we need to have more people know about it. I mean, I am going
Hmm.
to start seeing somebody in functional medicine very soon. And I
Good.
encourage others to do it because medicine isn't enough.
Hmm.
Um, and to help other functional medicine practitioners like you're doing right now only benefits society as a whole, I feel.
Mhm. Absolutely. This is my second practice that I've built. And my first practice, I bought my mentor out of his business. I worked with him for 5 years and then he decided to retire and I bought him out.
Hmm.
And for 40 years of his work, I paid him $8,000 for his practice.
Wow.
And I was so elated that I was a partner in this functional medicine practice and I loved it. But honestly, as soon as I handed over the check and I walked out the door, I thought, oh my God, I don't want to work for 40 years for $8,000. Like I just stole this from my mentor who I loved. And I realized at that point we had to do something different because I wasn't going to work for 40 years
Mm.
to turn over my practice to somebody for $8,000 and walk away. And that's when I started really understanding like I need to learn about business. I need to understand, how do you sell a practice? How do you scale a business? What makes it worth it, something? What makes it not? And I put a lot of time and effort for about 6 years in learning about business. And I eventually sold that first practice because my partner didn't have the same philosophy that I had
Hmm.
about building a practice that was worth selling someday. And so I left, I sold my shares in that practice, started my current practice, and my practice today is very successful. It's worth way more than $8,000.
Good.
And unfortunately, my partner just closed his doors and didn't sell his practice to anybody. So he's been in that practice for 25 years and he closed the doors and got nothing for 25 years worth of work. And and that's sad, but we see it a lot in medical practices. It happens quite often.
Yeah, we could have a long discussion about partnerships.
Oh
Some
yeah.
some just want a lifestyle, business where they're just kind of getting along and they're not
Mhm.
planning an exit. And certainly, I can't work that way, and I hope
Mhm.
others can't either. Dr. Deb, thank you so much for your time today. I mean, functional medicine to entrepreneurism to coaching, and it's such a fascinating subject, and you're doing great work there, and I wish you continued success. Thank you so much for your time today. I learned so much, and I know others that listen will as well.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a great time. I love having conversations with people about this because we need to spread the word, and
Absolutely.
this is a great platform to do that in.
I mean, obesity is, I'm jump. I mean, where are the health of our country? I don't want to get a tangent
Yes.
here. We had such a great opportunity during this pandemic to say, hey, let's get healthy again.
Mhm.
Let's start walking. Let's start eating better. Let's start seeing functional practitioners.
Mm-mm.
And it just didn't happen.
It
And
didn't happen. No,
yeah.
we had the COVID-15. Most of my clients gained 15 or 20 pounds during the
Ah,
shutdown because they were cooking and they were baking and they were trying
yes.
to do things with their kids and they weren't going to the gym and they didn't transition to outside care. And they ended up putting on more weight instead of using this as an opportunity to focus inward on themselves. And that's a huge problem. And there's not enough people talking about that.
I've heard of freshman 15, but I didn't hear the COVID 15. I
Yeah.
guess it's a similar similar thing.
Similar thing, you bet.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Dr. Deb, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. You be well.
Thank you. You too. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye bye.